Life these days feels incredibly complicated, right? Just so much information, so much change happening all the time. It can feel like you're just trying to stay afloat. But then you see some people who seem to, I don't know, just get it. They cut through the noise. How do they understand what's really going on underneath it all? Well, today we're diving deep into a way of thinking that helps do exactly that. It's called systems thinking. And look, it's definitely more than just some corporate buzzword. It's actually a really powerful way to make sense of complex situations, maybe even improve them. For this deep dive, we're looking at some fascinating excerpts from a document called Journey of a Systems Thinker. It follows this one person's career across, honestly, wildly different jobs.
Right. And our mission today really is to unpack how this systems mindset wasn't just learned, but how it evolved and got applied in completely different worlds. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking semiconductor design, super technical CAD stuff, all the way to big picture strategy for nonprofits and even global innovation programs. We're going to pull out those key moments, those sort of aha insights that can help you see things differently, see how the pieces connect.
Exactly. So let's trace that journey. We'll go chronologically, see how this systems approach was, sharpened and used every step of the way, starting right down at the circuit level. Okay, so this journey kicks off maybe a bit unexpectedly deep in the tech world. Semiconductor design at Intel. The source says this person started as a component design engineer, building automation for chipsets. That sounds incredibly specific, almost microscopic. So what made them sort of step back and start asking bigger questions even then?
Well, that's what's really interesting from that early stage. It seems the realization hit pretty quickly that even one tiny bug, just one part of a chip, if you didn't look at the whole system, that small thing could snowball. It could force a huge redesign across the entire product line later on. So the surprising insight wasn't just fixing the bug, it was realizing that any local fix, it has to work with the bigger system it's part of. This led to thinking proactively, like designing for integration from
Yeah.
the start. And apparently that cut down development time quite a bit because they stopped those ripple effects before they started.
Okay. So anticipating the dominoes, basically, even in something that precise. And then the career moved into managing projects, managing engineers. At Intel, we're talking big budgets, teams spread out everywhere. How did that initial sort of component level systems view, how did that grow when dealing with, the whole organization?
Yeah, that's where the lens really had to widen dramatically. The surprising thing then became realizing that, each team could be hitting its own targets, its KPIs, looking great on paper.
Yeah.
But those individual wins could actually mess up the whole project if they weren't aligned systemically.
How so?
Well, success wasn't just about one team being fast. It became about optimizing how design, testing, manufacturing, how they all work together, the interdependencies. You might have a design team doing a super fast sprint, hitting their goal. But maybe that creates a huge testing bottleneck down the line or a quality problem later.
Right.
So you have to look at the whole flow. It was a definite shift from just looking at isolated metrics to understanding the synergistic output of the whole system.
That's a really key difference, individual versus systemic success. Okay, so the next big jump. This person goes into international program management, still at Intel, but this is after getting an MBA. So from designing chips to managing engineers, now to leading technical development across different continents, that sounds like a massive leap. What kind of systems challenges popped up trying to apply this thinking on that huge global scale?
Oh, absolutely. That leap really put the systems thinking to the test. The immediate question becomes, okay, how do you take this idea of optimizing local stuff and scale it up to design like robust global ways of working? It wasn't just about projects anymore. It was about designing systems for, say, knowledge sharing. How does technical know-how actually move between countries effectively? Or culture? How do you build mentorship across borders? The source talks about creating programs that could sustain themselves and long-range plans that were really built on that systemic awareness. They weren't just putting out fires. They were trying to anticipate the ripple effects, the second-order consequences. Like if you build up technical leadership really strong in one place, but don't balance it elsewhere, maybe you accidentally create silos or even, strained relationships between regions.
That's really interesting. Thinking about how a technical program could actually help fix relationships or build strategic alignment. It almost sounds like, I don't know, organizational therapy for engineers.
Huh, maybe a little.
Was there a specific thing that made it click? That realization that, okay, it's not just about the tech structures, it's the people dynamics.
Well, they mentioned this initiative, Intel Technology Week Europe. that seems to be highlighted as something that directly helped bridge those kinds of divides. And it really shows how a systems approach isn't just about diagrams and efficiency, right? It's deeply about the human side, the cultural stuff that's always part of any complex system. Once you grasp how those relationships and dependencies really work, the human ones too, then you can be strategic about fostering collaboration, about getting people aligned. You recognize people are key parts of the system.
Okay, so from the heart of the corporate tech world, the journey then takes another turn into academia. This person becomes deputy director at the EcoCloud Center at EPFL in Switzerland. That's a top research university. And this center was focused on sustainability, cloud computing, advanced research, quite the mix. What did systems thinking look like there in that university setting?
Yeah, in that academic world, especially at that intersection, sustainability and cloud tech systems thinking took on another flavor. It wasn't just about how the organization ran. It became about optimizing the whole research ecosystem, like making sure shared computing resources were used really efficiently across different research groups. And critically, identifying how a breakthrough in one area, maybe in algorithms, could be applied systemically to cut the energy use of cloud infrastructure overall. The source mentions that this led to a 50% jump in new projects. But importantly, the focus wasn't just volume, it was on impact and sustainability, making the whole research model more cohesive, more productive in a meaningful way.
That's a pretty profound change for a research center, thinking about impact, not just output. But what really jumped out at me from the source material here was applying systems thinking to mentoring students. Apparently, the approach shifted. It wasn't just, okay, what job do you want next? It became more like, how do you build a career that's resilient, that has purpose? How do you build your career system? That feels totally different.
It really is. And it's a perfect example of applying those core systems ideas to an individual's life. Right? Instead of seeing a career as just a straight line, one job after another, it encourages you to see it as, well, a network, a system of skills, experiences, connections, values. And that system needs to be adaptable, resilient, especially now. It needs a sense of purpose to guide it. So yeah, it's about designing sustainable personal change by understanding how all those pieces of your life and career connect, rather than just chasing the next isolated goal.
Fascinating. Okay, and the final chapter we see in this journey brings us to entrepreneurship. Starting a consulting firm, Inspire and Aspire, LLC. Taking all this varied experience and advising other companies, startups, bigger organizations. So when you're using systems thinking as your main tool to diagnose problems in other businesses, what does that actually look like?
Well, at this point, it seems systems thinking becomes the primary lens, the main diagnostic toolkit. So for instance, they mentioned advising a startup that was growing really fast. Classic problem. The systems thinker spotted that their rapid hiring, while good on one level, was unintentionally creating these communication breakdowns between teams. Silos were forming, and that led to duplicated work, conflicting product plans, the usual chaos. The solution wasn't just hire smarter people, it was more fundamental. It was a systemic redesign of how different functions communicated, how decisions got made across teams.
Right, fixing the connection.
Exactly, and that allowed them to keep scaling without tripping over themselves, without losing that startup agility. It's about revealing those connections, those interdependencies that people often miss, and influencing change not by just telling people what to do, but by helping them see those critical systemic links themselves.
Yeah, it's really clear that through all these different jobs, circuits, global programs, university research, consulting, there was this core set of questions driving the approach. These seem like the real hallmarks of thinking like a systems thinker.
Absolutely. The source lays them out pretty clearly. What are the relationships and dependencies here? Where are the feedback loops? The obvious ones and maybe the hidden ones. How do the different parts affect the whole system? And what does long-term resilience actually look like in this situation? These aren't just checklist questions. They're fundamental. They're the lens you look through. And the big takeaway, I think, is that systems thinkers aren't really looking for the quick Band-Aid fix. They're trying to design change that lasts. They dig for root causes. They try to integrate things rather than isolating them. It's about adopting that holistic view, valuing how things interact dynamically.
So as we kind of wrap up this journey we've traced, what really stands out is that consistency, isn't it? How this individual, no matter the field semiconductors, global projects, academic research, advising startups, they consistently focused on the connections, the underlying dynamics, the ripple effects.
Exactly.
Those core principles, understanding relationships, dependencies, feedback loops, how parts influence the whole, they proved incredibly adaptable, incredibly robust.
That's the enduring message, I think.
Mm.
Systems thinking, fundamentally, it's about really grasping those intricate connections,
Yeah.
spotting the feedback loops that drive behavior, seeing how a change in one place can echo through the whole system. It's more than a tool. It's truly a lens, a way of seeing, and it's geared towards designing sustainable change, getting to root causes, and, integrating perspectives, not just breaking things down into isolated bits.
And as we saw throughout this journey, in a world that just keeps getting more complex, where being adaptable is basically the price of admission. This mindset, this way of thinking, it isn't just practical. It feels pretty essential if you want to gain clarity and actually drive change that matters, change that sticks in your own work, maybe even your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Consider some challenge you're grappling with right now. Could be a tough decision at work, maybe a tricky team dynamic, even a personal goal you're stuck on. What if you deliberately put on that systems thinking lens? Started asking about the relationships involved, the dependencies, the feedback loops, obvious or hidden, what unseen connections might suddenly pop out, and perhaps more importantly, what hidden leverage points might you discover? Points where a small shift could create significant, lasting positive change and build real resilience.